tonight, which is great. Yeah, I just wanted to get started with Queen's Gambit Orthodox defense. This is not an opening that I know particularly well, so I'm definitely learning, some of this theory along with you. This is actually super helpful for me. I get to kind of revisit a line that I've never really played, so this is great. C4, E6, Knight C3, Knight F6, Bishop G5, Bishop E7, Knight F3. And this is basically Queen's Gambit Declined Modern. And then here, the continuation is castles, E3, Knight D7, and Rook C1 and C6. So basically, this sort of transposes into like the semi-Slav, kind of interesting stuff. Basically, it's kind of interesting to see kind of where, basically where the division between the Queen's Gambit Orthodox and where the, the Queen's Gambit Orthodox and where the, semi-Slav divide. Hey, welcome, Matt Yop. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Yeah, so basically, I think of this as being a semi-Slav structure, one that has both E6 and C6 in it. I guess here, the defining characteristic that makes this a orthodox defense as opposed to a semi-Slav. I mean, it's kind of interesting because I guess it's not entirely based off of the black pawn structure. I think of this as an orthodox / semi-Slav mix, but I guess this would be characterized as orthodox defense. From here, there's many opening lines. I'm just going to sort of take a look at the main ones. Bishop D3 is popular, Queen to C2 is popular, and A3 is popular. They all have transpositional potential, and I think basically after that, you've got some threats on the king side that could be valuable. Hey, good evening, Euphelion. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Yeah, so I would say Bishop D3 is the main line, and let's just take the main line like through to another, for another period. So pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight d5, bishop takes e7, queen takes, castles, knight takes, rook takes. And here, basically white, I basically like, white's position. I think he's probably got, some solid initiative. He can get e4 in potentially. Black, in terms of plans, I think white has sort of a better established, route forward. I think he's going to start doing some pushes in the center. No, is that I mean, to be honest, I don't know this theory that well. Is this an opening theory line? Something for the points? Oh yeah, good question, Matt. Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think it probably is a good idea to come up with some more things. Jen has been nice enough to draw a few different emotes for us, which I'm in the process of uploading, and I think she's got some more. So if you guys have recommendations for emotes, I think Jen was having a pretty good time drawing those. If you guys think any other ones are cool and a good addition to that tactics emote. I like that tactics emote a lot, to be honest. I say tactics so many times, and I bring up tactical studies so many times that I feel like that. Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for being here, Rockets fans, and thank you, Mikey, for being here. Thanks all for joining the stream. But yeah, I'm open to ideas. On the Discord, we have a I guess I would just put that in the channel ideas section. It's pretty good. I think I'm pretty open to most things in terms of changes to the channel or that kind of stuff. Yeah, I could do that. I could do an emote of myself, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. We could do it, but there's other things that I would want to put first, I think. But it's an idea. It's an idea. I'll entertain that idea. But yeah, if there's any ideas for emotes that you guys would like to see, I will keep those in mind. But yeah, so yeah, good idea, good question, Matt Yop. I definitely think there's some there's some stuff along the lines of streaming, basically streaming related stuff, like learning what to do with the channel points. I want to come up with a better way of I think having a pre-published game list every day I think is probably a good step forward. That's what I'm going to do going forward. I'm going to like publish the games for each day or day ahead, onto the Discord schedule section. But that was totally that was something that someone suggested. So if anyone else has great suggestions, we'll make them part of the stream. There's nothing here that I wouldn't change if it makes the stream better. So definitely let me know. Anyways, there's here I think basically white has kind of a route forward. There's not much in terms of development. White's or black's light squared bishop is a little bit restricted on c8. Things like d3. Attacks on the king side don't seem exactly right here. Like bishop to d3, queen c2 doesn't seem that strong. I'm thinking something along the lines of like e4, rook e1, and white will be in a pretty good place. I don't know. I'll take it a few more moves just to see kind of a general opening strategy. But here, I think there's going to be play in the center, but now I think, yeah, this center expansion for white is probably the best strategy. I don't know. I'm sort of wondering if this can evolve into a kingside attack. It looks more and more likely after every move in this line, but I think it's probably just going to trade off into a relatively equal endgame, and all's going to be well on this. Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so this is a master game out of the Queen's Gambit Orthodox. But let's just play it again just so we sort of know the move order. The Orthodox opening, c4, e6. This is a move that I think of as being, the Orthodox structure. Knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, knight f3, and h6. Okay. Knight f3 and castles is generally the Orthodox structure. e3, h6 on the next move, or potentially knight d7, rook c1, c6. This is probably the most clearly defined Orthodox structure. But what's a little weird to me is why is it the Orthodox structure as opposed to the semi-Slav here? It's that distinction is not incredibly clear to me. Bishop d3, pawn takes, bishop takes. Hey, no problem. Why not bishop d6 instead of bishop e7? Okay, good question. I think potentially c5. Let's see what happens on bishop d6. I'm sure people have tried it, so we'll know. Here, a normal development, knight f3, c6, c5. But I think that's the main logic behind not playing bishop to d6 here. This pin is also potentially valuable. Keeping this knight from moving to e4 could be something that black wants to prevent. Black might want to play the knight e4 move at a later point in this opening. But yeah, I preface all this by saying this is not an opening that I know extremely well. That seems the most logical reason why bishop e7 instead of bishop to d6. But there is a pretty marked difference here. c5, I feel like c5 on bishop d6 really restricts it, but I'm curious. Maybe not. I don't know. But breaking the pin on the knight is definitely a value for black. Okay. So bishop e7, knight f3, castles, e3, h6, or e3, bn d7, rook c1, c6. White's basically got control over this file. Bishop plays to d3, queen plays to c2 potentially. But I think most of the play for white is going to actually be in the center as opposed to an advancement on the king side. Bishop d3 followed by pawn takes c4. Okay. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight takes, and overall here white is a little better. Probably somewhere between equality and Yeah, I mean there are situations. I guess in the Queen's Gambit declined. The main reason why I think White doesn't take on d5 is because it helps the light squared bishop. In the Queen's Gambit declined Orthodox and in the semi-Slav structures, the black's light squared bishop can really become a problem. Very difficult to develop. For that reason, c takes d5, e takes d5, and bishop to g4 potentially is a reason why I don't play, or I lean away from pawn takes d5. But it's really up to it's really up to the player at the end of the day. D takes c4, bishop takes, knight there, bishop takes, queen takes, castles. Yeah, just overall straightforward opening. I don't know. White's maintained the initiative. I feel like black losing the d5 pawn weakens his center a lot. E4 may be playable. Rook e1, e4, rook to e3 may be playable. And overall, I think White's got a pretty good place. Rook e1, bishop d3, bishop c2, queen d3 maybe, something like that. But I would try the advancement. I would get the breaks in the center. I think e4, d5 puts forward a pretty good plan for White in the next couple moves. Simplify in the center. Yeah, and pressure on the queen, I guess. I'm curious to just see if we have any lines here where there gets to be a well-established attack on the king side, but I don't think there is. I don't think that's where the play normally is in this opening. Here, g4 and e4 look more tempting, pressure exerted on the king side. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think of that as something that happens in this opening that frequently. Then again, it's not an opening that I know the best, really. So, yeah, no, of course. Thank you very much, RB Phil. I'm glad. Yeah, glad you got some value out of it. Thanks very much for sending the game, and thank you very much for participating. So yeah, so queen b3, queen e7, rook d1, bishop f5, e4. Yeah, interesting. I guess I would say this overall. Hey, welcome, Caitlin. How are you? Yeah, just so we know, Caitlin is streaming tomorrow night at the same time that this stream takes place. I don't know how many of you guys have gone and been to a Caitlin stream, but Caitlin's stream actually is Caitlin is a singer and performer and a friend of mine, so always happy to see her on here, even though she doesn't play too much chess. But it's awesome that she's here. So welcome, Caitlin. Yeah, you can post the link to if you want to post the link to your stream tomorrow, Caitlin. You can. That's fine with me. Yeah, it's really nice of you to show up, Caitlin. Very nice. But yeah, so here, e6, I guess. E6 I consider to be one of the main characterizations of the Orthodox. H6 is. I don't know if this is all. I think this is still the modern. Yeah, I think in order to be the Orthodox, it has to be this early castling e3 and h6 now, or even knight d7 now, rook c1, c6. But I want to look at the main lines for White. Let's look at a queen c2 line, and we can take a look at this. Rook e8, a3, a6, bishop d3, d takes, bishop takes. And overall, I think White's basically, pretty good, sort of similar to the other position with this neutralized center. Healthy development. In terms of plans, I guess I would say this one, I wonder if, a king, I think it's still center play, though. I think it's still center play for White. c5, pawn takes, knight takes. Definitely get the rook on d1 is the plan. Castles, bishop b7, knight d4, rook c8. And overall here, I think basically White is White is better. I guess not. This diagonal is sort of powerful, but I don't know. I feel like White has a better center here. I feel like the center here is underestimated for White. I want to play this a few moves further. Rook fd1, knight a4, knight takes, b takes. Yeah, it's a game. But okay, cool. Yeah, no, totally. Always feel free to watch Caitlin's stream instead of mine. Caitlin's a great singer and a great performer. So, yeah, not offended if you guys want to watch that. You can always see mine on a recording, video on demand. I don't know if Caitlin's set up for that yet, but not offended if you want to watch hers instead of mine. My stream is video on demand, and now with the YouTube improvement. We can do video on demand. The video on demand will be available forever. So many hours of lessons hopefully will be available for free. But thanks for joining, Caitlin. I was not expecting you to be here. But thanks for joining. Anyways, I'm not super good with Queen's Gambit Declined Orthodox. Let's just play through this. This Queen's Gambit, let's just do this one more time just so at least we know the basic formation. Knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop g5, bishop e7, knight f3, castles, e3, bn d7, rook c1, and c6. And yeah, this is this is a position to move forward. Solid for black, no major errors, lots of transpositional potential, and probably the least distinctive Queen's Gambit Declined. I'd like to look more at maybe master games from this, but it's just a very transpositional position without kind of key defining characteristics. Like if you're defining the Grunfeld, it's super easy to say, okay, knight f6, d5, that's the Grunfeld, and that's the Grunfeld response. But here, the distinction between Queen's Gambit Declined Orthodox is very limited relative to the semi-Slav positions, and they frequently transpose into things that are not immediately recognizable as either. So it's an interesting opening. I would check out some master games out of this MCO code, and overall, interesting playable game for black, similar to the semi-Slav. Obviously not my the Queen's Gambit really isn't a gambit. There's just not much. There's not much there. It's accepting the gambit is bad enough for black that I think there's not really too much to be done. Okay, cool. So this is a game played by black against Raymond L. White starts off e3 pretty unchallenging, e3 d4. This could transpose into the exchange French with d5 now. Cool. And now we have the exchange French. So basically exchange French being played against Raymond. Cool. c5 is interesting. One of the things about c5 is that, or one of the things about the French exchange is basically that white has a few different options. I'm going to look at the options. The one that I know the best as a standalone line is c4, which is the Monte Carlo variation. But other moves, knight f3, bishop d3, straightforward opening moves tend to work well in the French exchange. French exchange tends to be extremely drawish. You can put pressure on the d4 or d5 pawns, and after this mainline opening move, black plays a quick c5 and takes basically takes the attacking initiative away from white. This c5 is attacking d4, and it's basically a Monte Carlo attack with the colors reversed. D takes c5, bishop takes c5, knight f3, knight f6. And basically, like many French exchanges, it's sort of a drawish, very open game. It's hard to push hard enough to get an advantage without exposing yourself to risk. It's hard to press the French exchange without over pressing it. Is my main point. So yeah, basically here, e3, d5, d5, bishop d3, c5, yeah. I don't know. It's a French exchange variation with black playing the normal c pawn advancing moves here. c3 is probably how I would respond to it. D takes c5 appears to be the main line. Lines here include d takes c5, knight f3, and c3. I think I would play c3 just because it maintains the symmetry in the pawn structure. But d takes c5 works. This gives black an isolated queen's pawn. So everything's good there. Yeah, very interesting stuff. I think we've diverted from the game, but this is basically a kind of general primer on the French exchange. Hey, Jen.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Internet.
Is Dahlia coming over?
Yeah, she just took the train and I scooted.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. So here, this, so this is the French exchange variation. And here's Jen. Jen is here. Jen just came home from work.
Caitlin, come
And
over.
And Caitlin was here too. Yeah, Caitlin. I was not expecting Caitlin to come over, to be honest, or Caitlin to be on the stream, but very nice of Caitlin to drop by. Cool. So bishop g5, bishop takes c5, and black's no. I'm just chilling. Bishop takes c5, and this, basically black's exerting pressure on f2. So here, bishop e7, knight f3, and I think black's pretty much fine. It's just hard to get much of an initiative here, but this is the way that the game unfolded. So knight f6, bishop g5, black's showing a little better after bishop takes c5. This bishop is well positioned, but I think Caitlin versus Jen. Jen versus Caitlin, I think, is a better stream, to be completely honest.
That feels more fair.
Jen versus Caitlin, I would be happy to set up that stream if you guys were interested. But yeah, bishop takes c5, knight c3, and here basically black is black is equal. It's just a really equal French exchange situation. Well, you're the one watching the stream, Caitlin, so maybe you'll learn something and be it'll be helpful.
Hey, I watch the stream.
That's true. Jen also watches the stream.
I mostly watch the chat, but
Yeah.
technically, maybe something is absorbed.
Hey, Dahlia.
Hey.
How are you? Good. So yeah, so black is basically black is better here. White shouldn't have allowed black to have these opportunities on the queen side. Queen plays to b6, h3, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and b2 basically hangs. I mean, I don't know if it's considered to be the best here, but overall this is good for black. So yeah, d4. I'm trying to see when the eval shifts. d4 does stunt white's development a bit. It's sort of like knight b5 might be the best response, but certainly with knight e2, black begins to have a spatial advantage. Still very slim, but black has the initiative, slight eval lead here. Bishop g4, okay, that capitalizes on the defense of f3. Bishop takes, knight g3, and overall here I think black is fine. Knight e5 pins the f3 pawn. And black, it's still just very equal, but black has the initiative here. h3 and everything simplifies. I don't know if it's better to trade for white to take with, I guess white's losing the b2 pawn anyways. Maybe white should be playing like b3. I don't know. Black looks like he's got a pretty solid position, pretty solid attack on b2, pressure on f3. And here, yeah, rook e8 I guess is a potential idea, but queen b6 I like. That's a good move. And I'm wondering why white doesn't respond to it directly. Like, I would think b3 here kind of saves the material, right? What happens on b3? Like knight takes, and queen takes. Knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes. This to me looks better for white, to be honest. This d3 is going to be, or this d3 discovered check on the rook is a problem for sure. Maybe rook b1. How about rook b1 here? Rook b1, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes. Yeah, I just overall like this position a lot better for white. Yeah, but okay. Continuing on with this, it's just a really equal French exchange position. But black's doing his best to create some asymmetry here, and I think he might end up succeeding getting this, queening a pawn here. Cool. Yeah. So good job. Basically, that all those lost pawns on the queen side ended up being a real problem for black, or real problem for white. And then white, basically, black capitalizes by trading his rooks off quickly. I don't know if white should have been so willing to trade off his rooks either. You know, I don't know what the alternatives were. But I would rather have these two rooks on the 7th. You know, these two rooks on the 7th should provide some help to white. I don't know if it'll be enough help to not lose, but it should be somewhat helpful to have these rooks here. It pins this f8 rook at least. But yeah, continuing on with this. Okay. Bishop g5, bishop takes c5, knight c3. But black's already got the initiative. This bishop is just so powerful on this diagonal. You know, this is going to be a situation where black is going to probably have to navigate well with his isolated queen's pawn. But with that in mind, his piece play looks good. His bishop's not really doing too much there. I would probably end up playing bishop e6 pretty soon. Bishop e7, knight f3, and knight back to e2. Okay. Overall here, I think, yeah, I think we're about at equality, which is actually good for black. You know, the French exchange is a very drawish game. I mean, you know, basically white's giving black many opportunities to draw throughout it. You know, but now it's you know, the dial's sort of moving towards black being better. In terms of errors here, you know, I don't really see much bad for black. Black played, yeah, a very accurate game, kind of 95% accuracy. Strong game. In terms of mistakes here, I haven't seen anything that was too glaring. I guess they call that a mistake, maybe. But yeah, this is really feeling very accurate for black, to be honest. I'm going to go back and see if there's anything in the way of inaccuracies, but it just seems like a very solidly played French exchange. You know, bishop e7 probably was a little bit inefficient. You know, this diagonal is so strong. I would just keep it like that. I would play either bn d7 or castle kingside here. Continue the development. There's no problems with this bishop on c5. This bishop is in a good place on c5. This is the first takeaway from this game that I think could have been an improvement. I understand wanting to break the pin, but I would break the pin with this knight d7 and then queen b6. I would not, you know, basically I would not bring the bishop back here. Castles is fine. Maybe bishop e6, then bn d7. But I don't want to bring the bishop off of this diagonal. This is, you know, it's hard to come up with a diagonal where there's actually an attack getting exerted in the French exchange. So the bishop on c5. No, let me know, Kira. What are you referring to? So yeah, so bishop to c5, threatening f2. Cool. Bishop e7 is not correct. Bishop takes f2, knight to g4. The issue with that, all right, so yeah, that's what I was thinking. Queen takes and, you know, it loses a piece. But interesting tactical idea. So yeah, so bishop e7, I think maybe even, I don't know, I'm wondering if you can play an immediate queen b6, but probably not. Probably just better to castle, play rook e8, and then play for queen b6 in a minute. Yeah, I like that line. So bishop e7 is one of very few errors or inefficiencies that black plays. I think castling was better, and the reason why is because this diagonal, this potential attack on f2 definitely has some value for black. And undeveloping the bishop is, I think, a little bit too conservative. This, you know, it's fine. It's fine. It's not bad, but in the context of an extremely accurately played game, it's one of the few things that I think could have potentially been improved. Yeah, I mean, there's just many best moves here. It's really well played. Queen takes a2, I guess, is an error. Let's take a look at this one. With d3, you know, the engine is assessing, you know, you basically are going to be able to queen this pawn. So I would say like AR D8, D3, D2 with D1 coming might be better, but you know, black's already got an excellent position here. The engine is suggesting that you be more aggressive, play like D3, and then knight E4, bishop E5. The engine favors this line. I think what you did was fine. You were already winning. You know, you were in a pretty good place. But the engine advises against queen takes A2. You know, it advises to start just pushing the pawn and trying to queen now. Since, you know, I guess it just figures this pawn is going to require a piece to be sacrificed probably to prevent it from queening. So it's not telling you to not be too preoccupied over this extra pawn. It wants you to queen this pawn, not work towards the eventual queening of this pawn. Just basically launching the most deadly thing first. I don't know. You know, this is sort of tactically tricky, but that line is just fine, and this is obviously a great outcome for black. I don't know. I think white made an error in trading off the rooks. You know, white basically should have probably just left. You know, white's lost, so there's not really much to be done, I guess. But here, I do wonder if like you could have found some way to not trade both of the rooks off. Like, you know, I'm thinking along the lines of like rook b2, a4, rook d7 or something. Realistically, white's just probably lost, but this trading off this rook with rook a2 feels a little bit you know, feels like a little bit of an acceptance of that. It feels like too much of an acceptance of white's loss here. Anyways, pretty interesting. Interesting game. Very well played by black. You know, it's hard to win the French exchange, and you did it successfully. The only improvement that I would point to is probably keeping this bishop on this good diagonal. Something like bnd7 is probably more accurate. Something like or castles potentially. But don't. I guess I would say, you know, it's not the best idea to undevelop this bishop if you don't have to. I wonder like knight c6 potentially. So bishop knight c3. Knight c6. Nah, I mean, you know, white is legitimately gaining pressure on this knight. So like maybe knight d7, or I think castles and knight d7. Queen takes f6, and then trading the d5 pawn for the b2 threat. Yeah, there's a slight, you know, it was very accurately played is the main point, but bishop e7 was slightly better than keeping the bishop on c5 and playing a different move to deal with this pin was slightly better than playing bishop to e7. Undeveloping the bishop and taking it off of a good diagonal. Other than that, you know, I'd really have to work hard to find other issues with black's game here. The engine is suggesting you start pushing this d3 pawn immediately, but you know, we played it out a few different ways, and overall, black is winning this game. So, great playing, Raymond. Very accurate, strong game. Thank you very much for showing it to us. And you know, beyond that, you know, sort of nitpicking that bishop e7 move, very well played, very accurate. Good playing. Thank you very much for sending the game, Raymond. Well played. Good job beating the French exchange variation. A hard opening for black to beat. But yeah, great. Good stuff. Please keep sending games, and thank you very much for being here. Okay, next game was sent to us by Chinmay. Cool. Chinmay is facing the Sicilian. He's facing the Najdorf Sicilian with d6 and a6. Cool. e5, knight f3. I always wonder about knight f3 versus knight b3 here. I feel like knight b3, yeah, knight b3 is more popular. I've seen knight f3 a few times now too, but knight b3 is what I've generally seen here. Knight b3 can pair with like knight a4 and knight b6 potentially. It defends against this queen check on a5. You know, basically b6 becomes a potential outpost in this opening. The white queen usually plays to d2, the white bishop usually plays to e2, and castle's queenside. Castle's kingside, and then exerts pressure on this backwards pawn on d6. Yeah, I mean, knight b3, I guess, knight b3 is basically the big piece of this position. It's sort of, it's a 75% choice. Yeah, the f pawn isn't blocked. I think is one of the big. Yeah, no. I think you're right, Aphelion. The f pawn not being blocked is a big advantage. Basically, not allowing queen a5 is an advantage. And just overall, most of the play in this game is going to be on the queen side, I think. At least most of the early middle game play. So having your piece basically it's hard to transfer your knight from one side to the other. It takes a long time, and it's not super convenient with the way that the other pieces are placed. So, if you're committing it to knight f3, you're making this game, which definitely leans towards queen side play. You're focusing the king side there, so it's sort of thematically not. It's technically useful this game. Basically, attacking the king on the king side comes later in this type of Najdorf. Then I guess eventually I think that the knight could be useful. I mean, now by this point it's knight h4, knight f5 threats, but yeah, it's just it's sort of anti-thematic. Let's just look at a knight b3 line just for curiosity, like e5, knight b3, bishop e6, f3. So this is helpful. Basically this was the f3 blocking that you were talking about. Yeah. So f3, e4. This is better for this is a better way to handle the e4 square. Yeah, but I always think of the Najdorf as having a relatively delayed attack on the king side. I think of the king side attacks as being like the most aggressive in the dragon, but yeah, I could be wrong about that. I feel like moves on the queen side generally tend to slow down the king side development in the Sicilian for white. Like moves like c4 tend to mean that more time is spent on supporting the queen side, and where the dragon doesn't have to move white. h4, h5 can be played and pushed. But anyways, I'd say f3, bishop e7, queen d2, castle queenside, and overall here, yeah, this is the standard Sicilian plan. Press hard on white, press hard on black's kingside, and eventually, you'll be able to break it open. Hopefully quicker than black can start advancing on your queenside. That's the general trend of the Sicilian. Different lines do it more and less. This is one. This does also involve this kingside attacking, but yeah, overall, I mean, now white's, this is an interesting position. I guess I would say I favor black here. This king is pretty exposed. These pieces are oriented towards the queen side, and I would give an eval advantage to black. Yeah, black's up by at least half a pawn. It feels like even more in terms of practical compensation. But yeah, let's go back. Interesting. So what makes it a Najdorf? Basically, X move and not the e6 move. Here. Hey, thanks for the follow, Nap. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining the stream. So yeah, so knight f3, bishop e7, bishop c4, castles, and overall, I think white's in a pretty good place relative to queen e7. Things. This is unusual, though. I mean, this is a focused. It's sort of from what and d7, and what are white's choices? Tough kind of situation. The kingside attack is like several moves behind, put on the queen side, but at the same time, moves like a4 do look like they're pretty effectively undermining. So so anyways, knight takes, knight f6, knight takes e7, pressure being exerted on the f6 knight. It's awesome. And then ultimately that a4 undermining move actually is played. So that's great. Yep. Overall, white's, basically white's putting pressure on different places on the board. White has sort of, it's been interesting. Tactically speaking, I think white has played well, but there hasn't been much of the assembly of a plan. I think here, how has white established a plan, really? There's no target. It's mostly been responsive moves. Knight takes e7, I think, is fine. Trading the knight off and getting rid of the bishop pair, sure. This pin is good. Pressure on the knight is good. But white seems a bit all over the place in terms of his attack. A4 is an undermining move. A5 is a queenside move. I guess I would lean against A5. I think you can play that later. I think now is probably the time to really decide on an attack. Whether that's queen d3, rook d1, knight h4, knight f5. It could be that. But it's tough to kind of know where white should be oriented. I mean d6 looks like a good target for attack, but it's tricky. There just hasn't been much of a formation of a plan here. And here white's better. That basically comes out well for white. A very scattered game, really. Knight f3 is uncommon, not bad. In terms of eval, it's not really that much different than knight to b3, but it's definitely less common. Bishop c4 is actually fine here. One of the things in the Sicilian is that bishop c4 is not a move that can get played that frequently. But bishop c4 can be played after e5. After e5 happens, you're basically similar to similar to an Italian game or Ruy Lopez, where the f7 pawn is exposed to an attack from the bishop. So really, I would say as a general principle, I know there are a few lines that deviate from this, but hold off on bishop to c4 in Sicilian lines where e5 hasn't been played. E6 is usually just too good a defensive move to be played to block the threats on f7. Without those threats on f7, bishop to c4 is kind of not that great a move. I mean, e6, d5, and black is pressing with center expansion. It's not really the best idea. Castles, h3, and here, yeah, the knight's posted on d5. That's awesome. Bishop's pinning f6, and white, ends up in a pretty good place. This looks a little tricky. I want to see what the tactic, what tactic that leads to white advantages. Here, I guess queen takes e5, rook e8, and then potentially some threats on the knight, right? So let's just play out this line. Rook e8, queen f5, bishop e4. Okay. This is sort of complicated. But I don't know. Let's go back on this. F3 versus b3, okay. Bishop to e5, knight takes e7. I think all of this has been smooth, reasonable play for white. I don't like a5 here. A5 just doesn't particularly do anything. Here I would play probably queen d3. I think that's probably fine. Basically, you want to start improving pieces. It's as white here. Things like knight h4, knight f5 don't look super appealing. But overall, queen to d3, rook to d1, and maybe b3. I don't think white's ever going to be able to establish sufficient pressure on d6, but overall, I think, yeah, knight d2. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy attacks, that white can try to do to get a post. If white can get a post with the knight, that would be very helpful. But queen d3, I think, is the most immediate way to improve your pieces. Queen d3, I think, is pretty good for white. So a5 feels a little bit just overall, I think this game, it's just this game feels very responsive. It's not really, one where there was much of a long-term plan. Here, rook takes e8 is hangs the knight, and overall, this material all goes, and then white has a huge edge, which is awesome, and ends up winning. But in terms of ways that white can improve this game, here I think the opening all makes sense. Bishop e3, e5, bishop e7, cool. Bishop c4, good move, very playable after e5 with a legitimate attack on f7. Castles. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the stream, Rockets, and always feel free to watch the VOD. VOD is a very efficient, and honestly, I care the most that chess lessons and the chess instructional material is free. So super happy to have you watch the VOD, and I hope you enjoy the analysis when you get an opportunity to look. So yeah, castles, bishop d5, and bishop to g5 here. White is, basically black is winning, and here a5 is the first move by white where I really haven't kind of understood the logic of it too well. I guess, it sort of makes that, it makes the b4 pawn more isolated. I guess that's probably one piece of logic behind it. Now, rook to a4 can be played, queen to d2 can potentially be played. So I do understand the logic behind it. It's to get this b4 pawn isolated. Still, I think it's better to focus on white's development. Improve the pieces, like queen d3, rook d1. I like that plan. You do allow a5 in this situation, as opposed to a5 where you cleave the b4 pawn and the a pawn. But yeah. Good question, Aphelion. I will. Yes, I did absolutely get just. Yes, I did. Over. Very much for reminding me about that, Aphelion. Sure to that about it. I found that. So yeah, a cleaves the a pawn and the b pawn. And a piece. Yeah, no, for sure. So here, I think basically white's. White. Improving the pieces, but overall very let's take a look at this one. Yeah, okay. Well, white, yeah, this is 97% accurate. Really struck in accurate. Look for white's pretty strong. Okay, cool. All right, so let's look at some more stuff. On definitely, I'll good. Yeah, it looks like it's not having to buy an Ethernet cable. Sorry about that, guys. But it seems to be going kind of back and forth. Yep. So yeah, so here e4 b6, knight c3 d6. This is a kind of strange way for white to play this game. This is the Owen defense. Owen defense is b6 and bishop to b7. Knight c3 d6. Now basically this has been a relatively unchallenging way for white to approach this. This could be to equalize. He's probably going to come up with a break, possibly c5, possibly f5, but eventually a pawn break will be needed here for black in order to equalize the space in this position, space and center control. So overall, I think basically, white is in a pretty good place. Knight to, white has control of the center, spatial advantage, and this should end up resulting in better piece play for white. Bishop b5, a6, bishop d3, g6, and now white's about half a pawn better, 0.6 of a pawn better. Really, generally pretty good. White has a solid initiative as he does in many flank openings. It's sort of interesting that there's not really a way to cause problems for black here. I guess I'm looking at d5. Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, Leaf. Thank you for yeah. Very happy to take a look, Leaf, if you send it over. But yeah, so this bishop to b5 is generally this bishop to b5 is an attempt to cause problems with these open white squares. Between d6 and b6, I'm really it looks like this type of situation where you could really cause some issues with like a knight or some type of posting on c6, maybe even d5, knight d4, knight e6. Like some type of crazy, tactics can come up here based on this white squared weakness. Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much for sending it, Leaf. I will added that for I added that game for May 8th at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for sending it, Leaf. It'll be at May 8th at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Cool. So continuing on with this, knight f3, knight d7, bishop b5. This is not so great for white. Think basically d5 maybe. D5 looks like improvement. This makes a more aggressive attempt to try to capitalize pawns under development here. Potentially pawn takes c6, potentially pawn takes e6. But bishop b5 seems to cause problems less directly. I'd be tempted a6 or c6 here. Just push the bishop can't really be maintained on b5. g6, castles, bishop g7, and white's basically even here. This was kind of I guess I sort of feel like this was sort of a squandered opportunity. Like here, a4 challenging the pawn immediately, I think does pretty well. b4 could be potentially good, basically locking out this king side. With b4, there's not really a way that black can advance very effectively on this queen side. a5 leads to problems with b5. c5, could get taken by pawn takes c6. So b4 really stops, sort of stops black on the queen side. This is probably the most restricting move. Like, b4 just as a positional move here is good, because if you lock up the queen side, you can start attacking on the king side. And that's, I think, where white is going to end up winning this game. This ends black's counterplay, basically, on the queen side. So you can, divert resources elsewhere. a3, castles, queen d2, and then basically now, white's beginning his queenside attack, or his kingside attack. There's nothing really going on here. a3 is actually now holding back black advances on the queen side, and moves like knight d1, knight e3, knight to g4 paired with g3 are looking kind of more appealing. I'm wondering how white can get in on the king side here. Obviously, the center's completely blocked. The queen side's completely blocked, so white should be looking to the king side to attack, just from a strategic perspective. This ends up being pretty. I think there's a way to set up an effective attack here. G3, knight h4 is an idea. Queen e3 maybe. Bishop f1. This ends up being fine. And then there ends up being a major issue. So knight h3 is, so bishop f1 is not bad, but it's vulnerable to knight h3. On knight h3, g takes h3, queen takes f3. This is a little better for black. Definitely offers black practical compensation. Things like knight f6, knight h5, knight f4 are dangerous, kind of longer term threats. I don't know if black can really expand enough to make his queen dangerous, but it's definitely annoying and kind of and offers black practical comp. So here, queen takes, queen g5 is probably best. So bishop g5, bishop g2, queen h5. Okay, sure. Rook e3. But I'm sort of impressed by how quickly this deteriorates. Rook g3, I guess, is just overly restrictive for the rook. This basically anchors the rook on f3 for the rest of the game, right? I mean, it's going to get lost everywhere else. So I think this was an error. I think this is one of those errors with rooks and kind of middle game mobility. The rooks are the strongest in the end game. That's one of the basic principles. Strong on the end game, strong on cleared boards where they have a lot of mobility. But these types of things definitely do happen. And we were looking at one I think yesterday where there was a similar issue with rook mobility. But like rook g3 and rook f3 here, this rook is on f3, basically doing nothing. Maybe holding h3. So this shouldn't have really been allowed to happen. F5 makes rook g3 a real error. Instead, e takes f5. E takes f5 is kind of, this also looks dangerous for white. But here, rook g3 is definitely better. I don't know if it's good. And it might lead to similar mobility loss. Yeah, but basically black gets this positional tactic. F4 is a great positional tactical move. This causes white major issues. This rook is just stuck, and the fact that this rook is stuck makes this bishop also stuck. So not looking so good in my perspective for white. I don't know if white could sidestep with f4. Like, how does white, stop this the attack of black? Black is clear. Black is basically the aggressive side on this. These doubled pawns make white's king side weak. There's no g pawn defending it, and if black can maintain good king safety with something like king h8, f5, pawn takes f5, he's gonna have good chances along the g file. So black is the attacker here. I would be tempted to play like queen d1 or something. So say f5, queen d1. Queen d1 challenges this queen at least. If you trade off pieces while you're getting attacked, that generally tends to be good for you. So if the queen goes to like g5, then I don't know if you play rook. I guess probably pawn takes f5, and then something other than the pawn has to take back. It's a little dangerous. Black still has the initiative. Black is launching the attack, but this restricted development really caused white some problems that would have been best avoided. In terms of ways to go further with this, yeah, I don't know. Rook c8 is a blunder. Let's just play this through. I'm not immediately seeing this tactic, so let's see what happens. So basically, what ends up happening here is white goes to great lengths to clear out an escape square for the rook. So basically, having to fix this rook, using basically clearing pawn off of c4 and moving the knight. Okay, so then advances on this king side. King side's pretty open. This is going to be really dangerous for white. Probably something like f3 is going to be played. But rook ac8, f3, and then rook takes, queen takes. And basically the advantage, the recovery here for white doesn't really have that much to do with anything that's happening tactically on the queen side of the board. It basically happens in terms of trading off pieces and then and basically eliminating a key resource needed for black's attack. The computer, when it's assessing this -7, so first I say, all right, so -7, like that's really a positive eval for black. So why is the eval so positive? And the reason is because basically the king's going to play to h8, the rook's going to play to g8, and this rook's probably going to play rook a7, rook g7, or something like that. Both rooks will be necessary to break open the king side, but it will happen. So here, basically it's not an issue with trading off the rooks in particular. There's no big tactic that white finds. It's just that you're dissolving one of the most basically a resource needed for black to win here. Yeah, in this case, there's just not much, but yeah, there was a big change in momentum here when that second rook went off the board. It's a very difficult thing for a human to see, to be honest. When you're assessing the situation, you as a human don't really know whether or not this attack is going to play to a materially advantageous conclusion. It's tough to tell. But the engine knows that basically both rooks are going to be needed for an attack. So when the rooks, are offered to be traded off, or basically when rook c8, the best responding move is basically rook takes c8, or f3, I guess, stunts the attack worse. So f3, rook takes c3, queen takes c3, and this attack is over. But it's about resources being, usable for black on the queen side, and it's an engine, it's an engine analysis. Yeah, good idea. I mean, he really shouldn't have played rook takes c6. I think that was a big error. But here, you're basically, I think you're basically better as white. Black. I think it's pretty much over. But here, f3 and rooks trading off on c8. This is the closest that white gets in this game. Still probably a loss, but rook takes c8 here, and it's much more of a game. There's just the attack needs to be continued. The entire value of this extreme eval, this -4, -7 eval, is based on the idea that black's attack is going to be successful. If it's not successful, then basically if the black attack is not successful, then you're still in a materially even situation. So yeah, the big shift in eval there, when the computer sees the attack is something that can be stopped. Anyways, more stuff on this topic. I guess I would say, where would I change this game for white? I guess bishop to b5 was kind of fruitless. I think basically a better way to capitalize on, I think you're probably looking at the same thing that I'm looking at, which is that white's light squares are now very weak with a d6, b6 structure. A better way to exploit that is a move that looks almost like an overextension, this d5 here. This holds, this basically, if this basically holds the c pawn to c6 or holds the e pawn to e6. And on either of those moves, either movements of, either the two most natural breaks in the pawn structure for black, either c5 or e5, can now be en passanted by the d5 pawn. This will neutralize the center, and on e5, pawn takes e6, pawn takes e6. Black will have, white will have the more advanced pawn, but black will have, the small center, like small center control. So yeah, e5 I think is not the or bishop e5 is not the move. D5 holds the white squares that black has weakened much better. So yeah, bishop d3, g6, and overall here, this looks fine. I think a4 is more challenging potentially. This basically is more disruptive and more forceful on the queen side. It basically forces b4. In which case you can play like knight e2, or I guess the engine's recommending knight a2. But basically, the queen side's, the a4 locks up the queen side easier. Knight a2, a5, and basically no more progression on the queen side for black. Here too, there's sort of the same concept, which is this. There's a b4 move. I think instead of a4. b4 also does great in stopping the black counterplay. With the counterplay completely stopped on the queen side, you can start exerting threats on the king side. But like bishop h4 threatening with the threatening pin on f6 to d8. White's chances are on expanding on the king side here. So locking up queen side counterplay is a worthwhile move for white. And then here was really the biggest error of the game, in my opinion. I think white should have been very wary about this rook g3 move. This rook's mobility is already limited on e3. It still has retreating squares, which is the saving point of it on e3. But rook g3, and it's really stuck. A rook can get stuck in the center, and that's what happens. In terms of advancing the king side, I think it's the right idea. You know, I think, well, actually here, I think that you're getting attacked, so I think you want to trade. I don't think you want to really advance the king side. I want to neutralize black side, but neutralize black is white now. Stuck like that is not a good plan, I think. This really cost white. Rook c3 was a lot of effort, but ended up providing an escape square. And then, you know, basically here, black ends up not having really enough, or I mean, basically, black wins, but at the narrowest point, black ended up having, you know, basically lost his killer attack. So that was a big, you know, that was a big point of it. Anyways, this situation continued, and basically black, you know, black ends up forcing a win here. Good stuff. And now, yeah, white sort of just wins, or black sort of just wins. He gets up enough material, and the game concludes. So, anyways, very interesting, interesting game. It's involved locking the queen side, locking the queen side counterplay for sooner, and not getting the rook stuck on g3. Is that what happened here, King Me? Yeah, good work. Good work. Well, great. Yeah, great ending. I didn't think that would. I didn't see that happening. But yeah, excellent. Excellent setting up of the perpetual. Yeah, nicely done, King Me. Good work. Yeah, great. It's great when that happens. Queen and pawn end games. You know, perpetual's always kind of a lingering threat. And it's great that you were able to capitalize in this case. You know, obviously black's down a lot of material. Or sorry, white's down a lot of material, but great, yeah, very scrappy draw there. Nicely done. Good game, King Me. The things I would think about just from a strategic perspective: make sure that your rook doesn't get stuck, you know, in a mobility trap in the center of the board. In that particular kingside position, you probably wanted to trade off pieces instead of moving the rook, you know, to attack. And then you could and then earlier in the game you could shut down the queenside play with that early b4 move, and then that would have freed you up with the queenside block. That would have freed you up to start attacking on the king side. So overall, very good game, King Me. Interesting, intuitive, and I'm glad you got a half point out of it, because I think you played reasonably well. Thanks very much for sending it, King Me. I appreciate it. Please keep sending them in this direction. Super happy to do these analysis. I'm hoping that it's helpful, and thank you very much for the time with that. Cool. All right, so here's a game that was sent by White. This one is from Reddit, and we'll take a look. Yeah, no, of course, no. Thank you very much for being here. I hope it was somewhat helpful, and yeah, no, I really appreciate you being here. Feel free to come back anytime and to send games for analysis. Yeah. Cool. So here, you know, ideas, I guess. This is the Panov, right? Or Petrov. Why am I Petrov? And knight f3, knight f6, knight takes e5, main line, and bishop c5 is an unusual response. Main responses here tend to be d6. D6 is by far the most common response in master games. Knight takes e4 leads to some kind of dangerous traps. Queen e7 can be played, but I'm sure white, having played knight takes e5, is expecting d6. Bishop c5, I don't know anything about this, so this is a very interesting opportunity to learn a little bit more theory. I'd play d4 here. You know, d4 threatening the bishop looks pretty promising. It seems to, you know, expand the center, expand developmental possibilities, you know, give white a space advantage. So I would play d4. d3 makes, you know, I guess I would say it makes less sense to me, but it does make sense in the, you know, considering the e4 pawn. The e4 pawn is no longer hanging. Bishop c5 in general is a really unusual move. I would have played d4, but d3 holds this e4 pawn. Knight c6, b takes c6. Now white's great. White's a pawn up, basically. He won the e5 pawn for nothing. Now has a much bigger center and better pieces. So this works out great for white. I think white's best. So here's a situation where I think white has a really a clear plan of attack. I think I'll take it after d6, but I think this attack should be reasonably reasonably clear. Queen d2 and then h4. That looks really good for white. H4 pressuring the g5 pawn looks really good for white. Thanks, Ophelia. I always appreciate the vote of confidence. I am always nervous when the connection starts to slow down. But yeah, so d6 and then h4. White's game here is going to center around black's poor king safety. White hasn't castled yet, so definitely wants to castle queenside. Castling queenside here will allow white to attack black the most aggressively. d4 is fine. Pressure. Gets more of the center, pressures the bishop. Cool. h4. And yeah, I think basically, white has turned this into a real win. There just wasn't much. To be honest, I think black didn't really. I'm not sure this attack fully clicked for black. I think basically after bishop b5, bishop takes g5. What happens on queen takes g5? Oh, bishop f4 is crushing. Okay, cool, nice. Yeah, so here f3, bishop e5, bishop takes, and some pretty dangerous stuff for white against black. But yeah, I guess I would go c3, pawn takes b4, and here I think white's white easily broke open the king side. I wonder if I don't know if there's a better step for black here to try to avoid it. Here, something like bishop f5, bishop g6 might have been helpful. But overall, yeah, just basically allowing pawn takes g5. Castling queenside is clearly correct for white. And pawn takes g5. Yeah, white is just good. Nothing super exciting here. Where could white have improved? It's kind of hard when black basically gives up a 2-pawn advantage in the opening. I think in general white attacks pretty efficiently. I don't think I would have played e5. I think e5 is probably not correct. e5 seems to overextend white's center. I think you can leave. I don't think you really get much benefit out of e5. I think e5. I think you can either play queen d2 and be prepared to castle queenside next move, or you can play h4 now and already start this very early attack. I would probably go with the queen d2 route. The e5 move sort of neutralizes your center. You have an advantage in the center here. You don't need to start trading pawns. I mean, this is a big space advantage. You're on the 4th rank, and black is on the 3rd rank. So overall, this space advantage should be beneficial to white. I don't think white should trade off pawns. e5, bishop e2, and I think basically this should be all right. Pawn takes, bishop b6, and yeah, I think white's basically got a pretty good situation. Just getting through the king side that easily was very helpful. f3, and yeah, looks good. If black's not going to do much to support his king side, then I think you're all right. That bishop's hung. Yeah, I mean the only it's a miniature game. I mean you won in 20 moves, so what improvements could there be? This e5 pawn is the only move that I have some questions about. I think from a positional perspective, you want to keep your advanced pawns on the board. This is a pretty good idea, pretty good setup for white. Now you can start pushing with h4, queen d2, and generally be pretty solid as white here. You navigated all this relatively well. You played h4, which was needed. You didn't get forked on c2. Just overall solid. That one neutralizing center move is something to think about, but when you're winning on move 24 and the position's gone your way to this degree, I think there's not that much to come up with. Pretty game though, good win and good tactics. Great job exploiting breaking open the king side, and yeah, keep up the good work. Very solid in this game, and please keep sending them. Interesting looking one, very well played. Good job, good playing. Yeah, and then we're on to the last game of the night. Last game is here. And this is the Reels game. We'll take it from the Reels perspective, and here we go. The Reel is playing black, and he sees the Scotch. Okay, so against the Scotch, I have a pretty set thing that I do. I do I do pawn takes, so I Scotch gambit. Knight takes, bishop c5, bishop e3, queen f6. And here, there's a few different moves that can be played. Knight b5 can be played. It's very aggressive, where black will end up playing king d8 in the main line. And I actually just want to show you that one because that's sort of a famous trap. This knight b5, bishop takes e3, f takes e3, and then the correct move here is king d8. I think it can come maybe before, or I think maybe it can come after queen h4. So say g3, queen d8 here, or queen takes e4. This is the most accepted variation, where the rooks actually come off the board. I've seen, I basically think king d8 is the best line here, but maybe I'm looking at an antiquated book. Yeah, interesting. So I actually remember this as being king d8 as being a good line, but queen h4, g3, queen d8 is actually equalizing for black. Good to know, actually. This is a trap that you will see in your chess playing career, because I've seen it a number of times and it's tricky. So knight takes, bishop c5, bishop e3, queen f6, knight b5. This is the position. What you do here that equalizes: bishop takes, pawn takes, queen h4, g3, queen d8. Solid. Good to know. Good to know that that's the refutation of this. Black's still going to suffer from sort of inferior development. a6 is going to lead the knight to play d4, in which case if you play knight takes d4, then white gets a solid center. But you basically just develop normally here from this point. And this sidesteps the gambit and the aggressive gambit structures here. This is dangerous. Yeah, sorry to have missed your message, Aphelion. I'll take a look at that. I'll look at that right now. C3 is more common than knight to b5. This is just sort of a trap. It's a trap that I've fallen into. Some bad things can happen to black here. This is a trap that I know. So here, queen f6, c3. This is the most common. Here, knight ge7, usually bishop to c4, and then either a6 or d6, I think. I play a6. No, sorry. So here I play a6 or d6 are the main moves. No worries at all, Aphelion. No, I just wanted to take a look at the c3 after queen f6. Yeah, no worries. Knight to e5 is the most common, I think. Castles, b6, d6, all plays for black. Knight e5, bishop e2, queen g6, castles, b6. This is a very general Scotch classical variation type game. None of the material came off the board. The knight didn't play b5. Position's still a little bit vulnerable to knight b5. I would be tempted to play knight b5 here. In this case, black can start with like bishop to h3, bishop to f3, castles queenside. Okay, I guess that neutralizes the threat. One of the main things in, or one of a big thing in the Scotch game can be demonstrated here with basically, it demonstrated in this attack, this discovered threat of knight b5, making the situation very complicated. The refutation of this potential trap is this: queen h4, g3, queen d8. You will see this. I promise you'll see this. If you play the black side of the Scotch game like this, you will see this trap eventually. I've seen experts play it. It definitely gets played. So bishop to c5, bishop e3, queen f6, c3, gn e7, bishop c4, knight e5. This is interesting. I mean, I've seen a6 played here. I think this is fine for black, to be honest. I don't think there's any problems that really happen after a6. But the main line is e5. What happens with a6, though? Because I'm kind of curious. I've definitely seen a6 played. Knight e5 threatening this knight, or threatening this bishop with the knight. Okay, sure. Bishop b3. I generally don't leaf, but if I have some extra time, I sometimes do. But yeah, so bishop to b3 is basically this is the main line. This is the main line. Actually, bishop to e2 is the main line. But the knight e5 is the main line move. Bishop e2 is the most the most common response. Something like knight g6 maybe, or queen g6, castles, d6, f3. And basically black just develops in a normal way and ends up in a relatively solid position. Maybe bishop h3, maybe not. Basically I think this is relatively close to equal. This is just mainline Scotch. So I really wanted to show the mainline Scotch. That this knight f6 is also 4 knights game Scotch variation, sure. Bishop b4 is book, but black gets a solid position here, and this, basically has a straightforward way of developing. Moves like d5 can be helpful, castles, f3, d5, and overall here, basically black is, sailing smoothly with good piece development. The c pawns are a bit of a liability. It would be great if white played pawn takes d5. He probably won't. But the piece play for black is so good that that even with the doubled pawns on the c file, something like bishop c5 can be really restrictive to white's development with castling. Here, knight takes, b takes, bishop d2, and I want to look at this missed win. So the missed win here is bishop to a6. Or wait, sorry, no. Yeah, bishop to a6. That's a very quiet winning move. I don't really see that one super well. I guess with bishop to a6, the bishop can't really retreat. But this is a very quiet. Usually the engine has a big tactic in mind when it talks about winning moves. Bishop a6 basically prevents castling, which is valuable, and the king side is open, so preventing castling is more valuable than it would normally be. I guess it prevents queen to e2, but I don't know. Usually they're not that quiet. I guess the threat is queen d4, bishop c5, and then potentially forcing rook to f1 since queen can't play to e2. But it's a very quiet winning move there. Okay. d5, bishop d3, bishop takes, knight takes, bishop takes, and rook e8. Okay, cool. Knight e4, and then the refuting move to knight e4 is f5. You have this knight pinned to the king. You can just pin it and win it with your pawn. So overall, good. Yeah, let's keep looking. I don't know if there are that many other improvements for black. B takes is pretty. B takes I think is probably objectively the best. Trading off queens here really neutralizes the position. D5 makes sense, challenges the center. Bishop c5 makes sense too. Bishop c5 disrupts this kingside castling, so there's value in that. D takes, bishop takes, And then here they have this bishop a6 improvement. This is pretty intense positional play, to be honest. This bishop a6 restricting the king from castling on castling by holding the f1 square. That is valuable. But I wouldn't give it as good an eval as the computer does. It's a very computer-like move, to be honest. It's good fundamentally, but it's hard for Black to see these types of moves in the game and to correctly assess that he would be winning by so much after restricting the kingside movement. Bishop c5, queen to d4. Cool. I would do f5 here. Bishop takes, rook takes. And maybe rook d2. Cool. But yeah, okay, so there's something that we definitely need to look at here. This would have won. F5. With bishop f5, it's basically an equal rook and pawn endgame. In fact, probably a slightly worse rook and pawn endgame because you have these doubled c-pawns and a worse pawn structure. F5 was the main improvement. Bishop f5, okay, this is a little bit more unclear. So bishop takes, castles, bishop takes, f takes, rook takes. And basically a drawish rook and pawn endgame. White's going to get into d7 and do, basically get one of these pawns off the board, and basically, this was a real missed opportunity for Black. Hey, thanks very much for the follow, Rame. Thank you very much for joining the stream. But yeah, so f5 holding this knight on e4, I think is... Hey, thanks a lot for the follow too, Giant. I appreciate it. But yeah, so f5 here is, I think, the best idea. This wins this knight, and then you're good. Trading all this is, trading all this I think is not the best idea. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm down for pizza, Jen. Thank you for asking. Yes, I am down. Sorry to miss your text. I usually fall. Would you rather have Little Italy or Domino's? Or are you set on Little Italy? I prefer Domino's to Little Italy, just in case anyone on the stream is curious. I prefer Domino's, Jen. But we can go to either. It's fine.
If you strongly prefer Domino's, then we can make that work.
I do strongly prefer Domino's.
But then we're gonna make you get it.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Strongly prefers Domino's.
Yeah.
For how much longer is this?
Not long. 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I'll go get it. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, the main point of this is, this advantage sort of slipped away from Black. Basically, f5 won a piece. This is just this is a really valuable tactic. This holds this knight to this king, and you win the knight. This type of thing really needs to be seen because here, best case scenario, this costs about half a point, right? Castle's queenside, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and you're at a position of complete equality. F5 here, and you win. You're up a piece in a rook and pawn endgame. You have a full bishop advantage. This really must be seen, to be honest. If it's not seen, then you're leaving an opportunity on the table, basically. So f5 I think is an improvement. Overall, yeah, I guess, man, the rook sacks for the queen, but I still think white's very dangerous. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, Black ends up getting a good win out of this, and his rook ends up holding up well. But the queen is yeah. Maybe next time, FIFA boy, but yeah, we always decide. We decide between there's a Domino's that's like maybe 6 blocks away. New Yorkers are so spoiled in terms of like how close things are. Dominoes, okay, that's fine. I'll get it in a second, Jen. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Creeper. Appreciate it. But yeah, so basically the Domino's, there's like a Domino's like 7 blocks away, and then there's a Little Italy that's close by. The Little Italy's like half a block away, but I much prefer Domino's to Little Italy. So Little Italy's like one of those like cheap New York City ones that's like not very good, but it's always convenient, so you end up going there. I guess it has good garlic knots. Anyways, in this position, black ends up winning. I think white missed some serious tactical opportunities. If you go the other direction, you end up with a queen to black's queen, and I think it's about equal. There's no way that's your favorite pizza, Jen. If that's your favorite pizza, you're crazy. But anyways, Gotcha. I understand. I'm just teasing you. But yeah, so here, this, yes, you're funny. Yeah, but, this, where are the improvements in this game? I just want to close on the improvements. D5 makes sense. Black gets better center control. Black has great pieces. Bishop A6 was a suggested opportunity where the value in it is a positional gain, making it so this king is stuck in the center and that the king side's open and it's difficult to defend the king against threats like bishop c5, queen d4. Queen takes, and then knight e4. F5 is the move. F5 pins the knight to the king, and then black is winning. Black should win. Bishop f5 is a missed opportunity. And then in this rook pawn endgame, things are sort of complicated. This is tricky. I guess black is showing a little better, but generally, generally black I think should. I mean, it's tough. The eval favors black, but it just looks really generally dangerous. This is much more double-edged than your average two rook and pawn endgame. But best case scenario, you're probably still drawn. The real missed opportunity was f5. I'm just going to go through this one more time, but I think you play the opening correctly. d5 makes sense. Bishop a6 is the move that the engine suggests, but that's a pretty intense that's a pretty intense suggestion. And f5 was the real pivotal point of this game. This is a tactic that you really must see. A 4-point difference between this move and the second best move. This is decisive. So I strongly suggest doing your tactics training. You played a very good game, and it's sort of a shame to miss the kill shot here. You really were in a good shape. F5 pinning the knight to the king. You really would be good after that. But this basically offers black, this basically gives black a drawn position. The rook pawn is the rook and pawn endgame is complicated, and it's great that you were able to wind up with a win here. But getting that earlier win in that key tactical position, that was the really the key operation. So yeah, thank you very much for sending this game. Knight e4, f5, and black is sailing, smooth sailing for black. But yeah, great job winning this game. Anyways, I mean, this is a difficult position to win, and you came up with some good tactics, to stop all these pawns on the queen side. It's a good game, good win, and yeah, cool. Good, you saw good tactic at the end as well. Good find. The skewer winning the queen, ends the game. Yeah, so overall, very good game. Thank you for sending it very much, the real, and yeah, please keep sending them. I really appreciate all the games that you guys send. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I hope this is somewhat helpful. Thank you very much for thank you very much for being here, and yeah, keep sending games, and I'll keep giving lessons, and this is very interesting stuff. Thanks very much for being here, and have a good night. Next stream is at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. Looking forward to it. Oh, when is the match arena? Okay, well, I guess we can play one game. I have time for one. Actually, Jen wants me to order pizza, but I'll play one game against Leaf, and hopefully she won't get too mad. Because Leaf asked, so let's play him. Yeah, actually, we should probably stop. You can match me later. Match me soon. Match me soon, Leaf. On chess.com or Lee Chess. Here's this. Do you have Leaf the Do you have the No, yeah, no worries. Let's play. Yeah, no worries. Let's play later, Leaf. Are you on the Discord? Yeah, if you're on the Discord, you can just... Oh, okay. Here, I'll give you the Discord link. If it's helpful to anyone else, you'll... and here you go. Yeah, if you join the message, I'll play you a game tonight at some point. But now I have to order dinner. Have a good night to everyone. I'll be back at 10 a.m. in the morning. Thank you very much for being